Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Refining Rhetoric. I'm excited to have a Classical Conversations graduate, entrepreneur, self-starter, Nathan Burns on the show today. He'll talk about his efforts to mentor other teenagers, starting businesses, and what it was like to be a Classical Conversations student. So you won't want to miss this episode, so let's jump in.
Classical Conversation Studios presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Refining Rhetoric. Today, my guest is Nathan Burns. Nathan is a former Classical Conversations Challenge graduate and a U.S. national champion in gymnastics. Now he is a machine learning engineer and entrepreneur. He studied economics at the University of California, Irvine, and as if that was enough, he also performed on America's Got Talent as part of the group Acro Army. So I'm sure my daughter and wife have cheered you on. I'll have to go back and watch your episodes. But Nathan is passionate about many things, but especially entrepreneurship and starting businesses. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Really blessed to be here.
Nathan, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your background in homeschooling and college and your career. Just give us a brief overview.
Sure. I'll touch on some major points. So homeschooling was out of necessity. Father was a Marine. Parents met at Camp Pendleton out here in Southern California. Moved to Fredericksburg, Virginia when I was very young. Started in just homeschooling in the basement, learning times tables and reading. I rebelled against reading. If you guys remember the Dick and Jane books, like Dick runs up the hill, Jane kicks the wall, I despise those. So I rebelled against reading. But then a couple years later, right when we started getting into CC, I loved reading, and I found out that novels were my favorite things, and just like, hey, I could read, and there are so many things that I could learn through reading. Got involved in CC through friends at church. Got invested the first year, loved it. 2008 hit, my father lost his job, and so we moved back here to California to be near family, and Dad got a job with the family business out here. Continued through CC all the way through, met my friends who I would later graduate with here in San Diego. Solid group of guys. We still stay in touch today. Love each one of them to death. And they are awesome. Finished CC. I'm super proud of my time in CC. That's the best education that I've gotten so far. Jumped into college. College was kind of terrible. Was not a fan of the whole secular way of teaching, and teaching at you rather than teaching with you. It wasn't fulfilling at all, and God really pulled me through a lot of that. My favorite part about college actually was leaving college. COVID hit my sophomore year, and everyone went online, and that was my favorite time. I was like cheering, yes, I get to go home, get to have fun again. Everyone kind of unanimously learned that 2x speed was a thing all at once. So we're all watching everything at 2x speed, and the natural skills that are developed through CC and just being able to read a book and teach yourself came in big time. And I went from, so I started in computer engineering at UCI. I was undeclared shooting for computer engineering, and then God totally pushed me towards economics. And he really made that happen in a very important, special way. But finished, went from a B- student in person to an A+ student overnight, being online. I was back in my element. I loved it. Graduated. While I was in school, my dad actually got his master's through the GI program, and he's got into cybersecurity. And freshman year in college, he said, Nathan, cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, those are going to be big. You need to go into one of those two places. And so I was like, well, you're in cyber, so I'm not going into cyber. So here I am doing artificial intelligence. And right now I'm a data science contractor while I continue to grow my business.
Awesome. Now, one of the things we've been asking our guests this year is to define truth for us. So how do you define truth in your life?
Yeah, well, your other guests have already done such a fantastic job. truth comes from observing reality, and reality comes from our Lord. He spoke reality into existence. So I'd say his word is truth, and who is the word? Jesus. And Psalms, I believe it says, what was the Psalm? 105. It says, "How sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. Through your precepts I get understanding. Therefore I hate every false way." And so I would say it's something that has to be immutable. It doesn't change. It's non-metamorphic. It's consistent, and it has to stem from something that never changes. And in our continuum of time, only God doesn't change. So that I'd say God is truth.
Awesome. I love that definition and bringing in Psalm 105. I also love the term immutable, because if you're into crypto, and then we have the crypto segment at the end, Bitcoin, many people would say that it's immutable, which is why maybe as an economic major, you've gotten into it. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that later.
Yes, sir. I mined it during COVID. I was an Ethereum miner during COVID. I think everyone was.
Yeah, a lot of people were trying to figure out how to make that extra money. So what is machine learning, and what does it mean to be like a machine learning engineer?
Sure. Yeah. So machine learning, if you can think about it like a car, so you have lots of bits and pieces on your car, but what really makes the car go is the engine. And so machine learning is the engine of what you can consider artificial intelligence. It's where we take data, we clean the data, we sift through it, we decide what we want, we might add more statistics to it, more data analysis, and then we teach the computer. Like we give it this data, we give the computer the data, and then we break it. A lot of the times we'll break it into training and validation. And so the training will say, here is your question. I want you to make a guess. And then we give it the answer. And so through the trial of guesses, because it'll guess super duper random things, and then it'll slowly get closer and closer to the right answer, because you're saying, guess, I give you the right answer. Guess, I give you the right answer. And through some very high level math, which goes a little bit beyond me, those guys are real geniuses, we get closer and closer to what the answer is. And then as we get to the answer, it can predict better and better. And then you get to once you're done training, you go to your test set, and your test set will then validate whether or not your training was accurate. And there's things called like overfitting, where you get too close to your training data, where you're not able to expand to larger fields of data because you're too close. You've limited your number of variables. And then there are all sorts of little things that we can tweak here and there, kind of like tuning your engine to get it to purr nice and like a kitten.
Now, you mentioned that your dad got you interested in these ideas, but you got an economics degree. So how does economics come into machine learning and programming? How did you bridge that gap?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, economics, when I was switching to economics from computer engineering, economics is not a skill set, it's a knowledge base. So when you're learning economics, there's not really a career for you, or work to do, really, because you're not making something, you just know things. And unless you're like a policymaker, which is pretty hard to do coming out of college, you need to have a skill. And so having the skill of programming, skill of machine learning, you then are able to actually do things with your knowledge. And I would say I lean more towards business than economics. Not a big fan of central planning. I like the Hayek and Austrian school of economics more.
Yeah, we're big fans of them here at Classical Conversations.
Yeah, but in college they only teach you Keynesian. Only. They won't acknowledge that the Austrian school exists. I tried to have many discussions with professors, and they would not even talk about it. But really, it just comes down to everyone needs things done. Everyone needs, everyone would like their life made better. And there's a lot of ways that software can make things better, but economics helps you to look at the big picture, see, in really simple, almost silly ways. It's like, wouldn't you like to have more time with your family? Let me write something that will automate your email sending list and combine for a financial firm. I've been talking with them, and they want us to bring their tax documents onto emails and automatically have that all get sent out. And so they get to get that done faster. And during tax season, they get to go home to their families faster. It's really simple, really easy stuff like that, where economics and computer science come together, seeing the need, filling the need, and being able to fill the need.
Nathan, most of our listeners are parents. And so do you have any suggestions for them if they're wanting to teach their children to code or program, or help them just dive into what seems to be the future?
I've thought about this a lot. And in my own experience learning, doing projects and connecting it to the things that the students, in my own case, what I've enjoyed, actually making projects that I care about and are exciting to me has really fueled my journey in coding. A lot of coding can be memorize this, learn how this function works, dive through thousands of pages of documentation, which can be a real slog. And that's a lot of how my experience at college is memorize all of this stuff. But when you have something that you are excited to work on, it becomes a joy to go find how to make it work. And you will spend hours looking through obscure internet Reddit posts and Stack Overflow commentaries to find your answer. Yeah, it's really...
I don't know Greek, but yeah, I know what Reddit is. But yeah, I think I totally agree. If you can ignite that passion in the student,
mm-hmm. Right?
They will be much more interested in what they're learning. One of the things that I see out there in the marketplace is Chat GPT. Some people are super excited about this AI. Some people are super scared about it. You talked about machine learning and really being the engine of AI. So, what do you see in AI right now, and where do you think it's going?
It's going to grow like all automation. It is a subset of automation, actually. And so it's going to replace a lot of jobs, but it's going to make new ones too. It's kind of like when Ford initiated the assembly line. It changed the way that people did the work that they do. So I think it's going to be the same with artificial intelligence. It's going to make people's lives simpler. It's going to make them more effective. I'm not a massive fan of the general intelligence, artificial intelligence. I just see it as I think about what's the goal of it, and it feels a little bit like they're trying to replace human intellect. And I think God did a pretty dang good job when he made us. So I'm not a fan of the general AI as much as I am excited about the specific AI and the real skill that it can produce in, something as simple as driving. In the grand scheme of how hard AI problems can be, driving is a fairly simple one. But I think cars that can drive, I still like to have human backups, but I still like and am really excited about the opportunities of AI to really remove a lot of the mundane tasks that clutter our lives and make things a lot nicer, because we can spend our time on things that matter, our family, investing in the younger generation. I have a really big heart for young men, and I'm really excited to be able to spend more time doing that when I'm a dad, because I don't have to do as much of the grunt work, so to speak.
You mentioned earlier in the interview about how with machine learning, it gives it a guess, and then you try to give it the right answer, and it tries to kind of learn and come up with good answers. We've seen with some of these recent AIs where they might be biased against the left wing or right wing or specific types of answers. Does that concern you at all? And is there a danger in people using AI that has a implicit bias from its programming?
Am I concerned about people listening to philosophers on TikTok and YouTube, or listening to extremely biased media, or being influenced heavily towards despising God's word in school? I think I think Satan hides himself in a lot of really cool, pretty packaging. And I think that this one's just a sparkly, glittery, technologically advanced version of Satan trying to twist truth again. And I would hope that as the future continues on, that we would find Christian or conservative or some other people that are interested in making artificial intelligence models and interfaces for public consumption that are edifying, encouraging, and ultimately grounded in truth. And yeah, so I am a little bit concerned, but amongst the plethora of things, God's got it. He is going to turn everything for good. And I'm not particularly worried about it. You might want to cut this part out, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. The initial starts of the internet was based off pornography. And so the thing that really boosted the internet from 1996 to 2000 was massive pornography traffic. However, now God has used the internet to spread his word across the globe in numbers never seen before. And so if you were to ask me at the inception of the internet, Nathan, how do you feel about the internet? I would say, well, I'm not super hyped. It's really tripping up our young men that are needed more than ever. And I would be concerned. However, now with hindsight, I'm still concerned. Pornography is still a massive issue, which is affecting all of us young men. It's everywhere. One Google search away. However, God has turned the internet around. He's made it an amazing resource for people all around the world to gain access to his word, to teaching. You don't know how many thousands of sermons I've listened to online. And one of my mentors, Craig Anderson, posts all of his videos for kids worship online, free for everyone to use. It's called Imprint Kids, if anyone wants to look it up. But that resource would not be there without the internet. And God has really turned what Satan intended for evil around for good. And so I have full confidence that he'll do the same thing with ChatGPT and all artificial intelligence.
I enjoy that answer. And for our listeners who don't know, virtually every single technology is started that way. I mean, the reason that DVDs beat HD CDs and the reason VHS beat Betamax was all because pornography decided to go with the one technology over the other. So it's a bizarre thing to not think about very often, but you're spot on. So you talked about being an entrepreneur and enjoying business. So what are some of the businesses you're starting? You talked about doing some data science stuff right now. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your what it's like to be a CC graduate and now working.
Oh boy, it's a treat. Somewhere, I think it's Proverbs 3. No. It's Ecclesiastes 12. It's right before the last section. It says, it's like the writing of books never ceases and the never-ending study brings sickness. So that's not a direct quote, but it's kind of the gist of it. And it's really exciting to actually be working and making things. And like my software, so my little company, very little, not super impressive right now. But what we do is we just go into small companies and we say, how can we help you? How can we make you money? How can we save you time? And then we just figure out how to do those things. And it's not like we know everything coming into it, but as a CC grad, you have so much knowledge, such a wide base of knowledge, and you're not afraid to get your hands dirty. A lot of guys that I know who got out of college are like, oh, I studied physics. That's what I do. I do physics. All I do is physics. I'm like, but what else can you do? How else can you use it? They just want to go a lot of the times into research labs or something specific for their field. As a CC grad, I feel like I love how Jesus is the center and everything else is connected. And I really feel that way. And so somehow by God's divine providence, I've ended up in a place where now I get to connect all sorts of different dots on a daily basis, learn every day. And it's probably harder than having a normal job, but I love it. And it is fulfilling to know that it's not just a job, but I get to pour into the young men that are working for me. And it's kind of like a ministry. Ministry is kind of a fancy word, but it just means being the hands and feet of Jesus every day and helping to bring up disciples. And so I feel like I'm helping to teach other young men who might have gotten a bad understanding of what it means to be a good businessman, a good worker, someone pushing for the kingdom in work, and try to help them become the role models for the next guys and to be Jesus every day. And so that's really cool and really, really edifying.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things I like about being CEO of Classical Conversations is just being able to disciple, others in the business and helping them see how what they do is part of their ministry here on earth. Wherever the Lord's called you to be, that's where He wants you to minister. He never called a part-time disciple.
Exactly.
Do you have any business heroes? Is there anyone that you look up to as you start a business and try to grow it?
Not particularly. I've read a lot about like Carnegie, Rockefeller, Apple, Microsoft, all of the modern companies. I would say this is always hilarious, but looking back on my time, the two greatest resources have been Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, and making mistakes. Those have been the two most valuable resources for me.
Well, that's good. Yeah. It's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get back up. And I love how Proverbs is 31 books because you basically can read a chapter or 31 chapters. You can read a chapter a day and you can just always be doing that on a daily basis. So I don't get through Proverbs every month, but I always trying to make sure whatever day it is that I'm reading that, those set of verses.
I've really been meditating on Proverbs a lot more, taking it slow, trying to really memorize chapters. And it's hilarious looking back on the businesses that I've made in the past that have failed. And the answers are right there. Like Proverbs 1, like it talks about some of the problems that I've made. It says, do not combine your purse with men who are, we're condensing here, but don't combine your purse with people who are greedy for gain and their feet run to evil. And if I had just read that and meditated on it and listened and really, God really gives you eyes when you seek Him. And if I had seen that when the time was there, I would have been way better off. Way better off.
I think we've all had those learning experiences, so you're in good company. You talked about your mentorship and how important it is to disciple young men and being involved in youth ministry, and I agree. I mean, I think our culture has really done a disservice to young men. So, what are some of the ways that you help mentor individuals that are coming up?
Well, I have to say, I loved your Trail Life podcast. Like, that was hitting the nail on the head. I have been helping out with junior high. I was involved in college, but junior high, right now I'm doing 2nd and 3rd grade. God really puts you where He needs you. Every time I kid you not, drug into kids ministry and said, you need to help out here. One time, a friend from church literally grabbed me by the hand and pulled me into the children's ministry meeting where they were trying to recruit new people. I stayed for the sandwiches and I got roped in, and it was one of the best, I won't call it a mistake, but one of the best circumstances I've ever fallen into in my life. He just puts things on your heart. And when He puts things on your heart, they're a joy. And so being able to go out into nature is one of the biggest things that really helped me connect with the boys. We've gone on waterfall hikes. There's something in a young man when you teach him how to light a fire for the first time, where there isn't just a fire reflecting in his eyes. There's a fire in his eyes. And you can really show them God's love when you're in action more than talking to them. And so in every scenario, no one is not discipling. Everyone is in exactly the place, like you said, where God called them. And so being the hands and feet there and being the example, my heart's just really pulled towards young men. It's become second grade through probably 18, 19 years old now. I actually started with junior high ministry when I was 18 years old. And there's this insanely beautiful thing now that God has blessed me with being able to see is one of my junior high boys. I've been with him and now he's 18 and now I'm getting to see him minister down to the next generation, and makes me tear up a little bit seeing God working, because I know it's not me and I made a lot of mistakes, but seeing that God fills in the gaps everywhere, all the time, every day. And he puts joys on your heart that are important and relate to them. And I've always been a hiker, an outdoorsman. My dad was a Marine. I have been in a baby Bjorn hiking since before I was 1 year old. And I just love that. And funny story, actually, this will be my last little bit on this. There was one day when I was sitting in church and I was watching the band. I was like, this is pretty awesome, but this is the one place in church that I don't really want or don't really care to be. I've always wanted to be a pastor. I have been volunteering all over the place. I was the volunteer director for a college ministry for a year. So I made teams and organized people and got trainings done and got people involved more or less. And so I loved all the administrative, the teaching, diving super deep into scripture and knowing the different versions of the Bible, why we believe what we believe, how we believe what we believe, how we live it out. But worship was just never my thing. And now God has thrown me into learning guitar and doing worship with second and third grade. And he's put this awesome mentor. I mentioned his name's Craig. He's put him in my life and he's just one of the coolest dudes. I'm a fangirl for Craig. Craig is amazing. And it's just, he puts these desires on your heart that you didn't have before. And it's just mind blowing, because one of my favorite things every week is going in and worshiping with the second and third graders, because they have so much joy, which I feel like is lost in worship all the time. We're really good at getting deep and intimate, but just the excited joy, King Jesus is all, like it is so infectious and beautiful. And it just it's probably the highlight of my week every week. And I love it. And I love being part of God's plan, because I'm just along for the ride, really.
Well, that's great. I know, it's always fun to see young children worshiping and, realizing why God said, you become like them to enter the kingdom. And of course, not only are you mentoring people, but it sounds like you have a mentor in Craig that's helping you along, which is great to hear. If you follow me on Instagram, or maybe I've mentioned it on my podcast, we're a gymnastics family. My wife was a level 10 gymnast, and my 8-year-old daughter, should be 9 later this year, is a gold gymnast, whatever that means. So you are national champion for your age group. You've been on America's Got Talent with the group Acro Army. So how did you get interested in gymnastics? And tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that's a really silly story. So dad was Marine. He found out he was having a boy. And he literally Googled, like the first or second year Google wasn't existent. He said, perfect male body, clicked on images and scrolled through until he found gymnasts. He said, they have the best bodies. They're the strongest. My son's going to be a gymnast. And that's seriously how it happened. That's not a joke at all. So from the time I was 2, I was in gymnastics, privates, little tiny tumblers, doing all that stuff. I'm sure you've done that with your kids.
Oh yeah, my daughter's been in it since she was 18 months old. So,
oh yeah, you guys are a real gymnastics family.
Yes. Yeah. So, do you still train today? Are you still doing gymnastics, or is that past?
Yeah, a little bit of that. So we moved here to California. I was training for let's say 10 years. Ish, give or take, maybe 12 at that point. And so I had just gotten hurt. I broke both my wrists within a week of each other. And all the good coaches left from my gym all at the same time. And so I took a hiatus. My brother got involved in a trampoline team, and I got pulled onto the trampoline team. But those guys are crazy. I think they legitimately do not feel fear, and I do. And so I admire them greatly, but I cannot be a trampolinist. I got pulled into their fledgling acrobatics program, and pretty much at that point I had been doing gymnastics for 14 years at that point.
Yep.
And I decided, it really bothered me when people would say, oh, I do gymnastics, and it was like 1 hour a week, and I was in the gym like 29, 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to get international. I'm going to try to be on the team. And so I was in acrobatics. So I was like, I'm going to go into acrobatics. I moved, actually going into Challenge 4, I moved away before Challenge 4 started up to where one of the 2 feeder gyms for the USA team was. And so my Challenge 4 year, I was living on my own. And just training every day. We'd wake up at 5:30, train, do school during the afternoon, train in the evening, go to sleep, repeat. And it was a pretty intense time. I've wrestled with whether I would put my kids in gymnastics, because it is at the highest levels, it's a massive commitment, but also at the highest levels, it's a very abusive environment. Your wife was a level 10 gymnast. Yeah. I remember the room that all the allegations are. Like, I know exactly where that room is. And I remember the day that the court case started. And I remember everyone just being super nonchalant about it. And not to be an alarmist, but I do believe that everyone on the Olympic team at some point is mentally, physically, or sexually abused. And I've known a lot of the physical and mental ones. They don't usually do the sexual ones in the light, so I didn't see any of that. But God super protected me from that. There were a couple moments where I totally could have made a bad turn and been one of the victims, actually. And so I don't train gymnastics anymore. I actually moved into jiu-jitsu, but still have a love for it in my heart. Gymnastics was a big part of my life from 2 to 18 years old, little break in there, but God he provided, and he really works through all things. He's turned every bad thing about it into a blessing, and it has given me a work ethic that is carrying me through and helps me to never quit, never surrender.
Yeah, I know a few Olympians in other sports, and they've definitely had some mental and physical issues because of their times trying to compete for the Olympics, and some of the things that the coaching and training staff does that I don't necessarily agree with. So I don't think it's just in USA Gymnastics, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm actually curious how much of that is necessary.
I would say none of it.
There is a certain point of you need to be super duper duper tough, because you're destroying your body. I have old man back at this point. And so you need to be able to be at that level, but the abuse, once it steps into the level of abuse, let me leave this one last bit. In the process of learning, you have to go through this. You learn, you get broken down because you realize that you don't know everything that you thought you did. And then once you reach the bottom, then you get built back up, and then you become an expert. And in the process of gymnastics, I felt like I was broken down, and then I never got rebuilt back up. And I guess that's my last 2 cents on that.
Well, tell us a little bit about your America's Got Talent experience.
Oh, that was so much fun. That was the most fun I ever had in gymnastics. Not going to lie at all. Super duper duper fun.
Did y'all make it to the knockout rounds, or how far did y'all get?
So my experience was I kind of came in at the back end. So They were on Acro Army. They got second place. And we were done. And then came back later as invitees to the Christmas special, which is the one that I was really involved with. And I mean, we trained at a real 108 degree, felt like a hangar, like 20 minutes away from Hollywood. And we were learning all the routines and it was super fun. And then you go to the event and you go through hair and makeup for however long you're doing it. And everyone's super nice. And one of my favorite parts is, have you ever heard of like Dancing with the Stars?
Yes.
Yeah. So we used the Dancing with the Stars costumes, but modified so that we could do the skills that we needed to. And so there was a professional dancer named Val, and they modified his costume for me. And they crossed out Val and wrote Nathan. And that I thought was just the coolest thing. I loved that so much.
Awesome. Well, Nathan, thanks for joining us today. We covered a lot of interesting topics. Is there a way to connect with you if anyone wants to chat or learn more about you? And is there any final words of encouragement or advice for our listeners?
Sure. My email is nathantburns00@gmail.com. That's my personal email. If you email me there, you will get me. I also have a podcast called Trash In, Trash Out. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. That's kind of a place where I try to put the information that I try to pass on in discipleship to my high schoolers, my junior hires, my second and third grade boys. I try to condense it into bite-sized pieces and put it on there. So I have an email through Trash In, Trash Out as well, if you want to reach me that way. I'm just excited to connect with other Christians and non-Christians who are really seeking truth. So open invitation to anyone to email me.
Well, thank you so much again. And, connect with him via email. Go check out his podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, Robert.
All right, let's practice the 15 tools of learning together. Those are, of course, the 5 core habits of grammar, the 5 common topics of dialectic, and the 5 canons of rhetoric. And we're going to practice one of those 5 tools in each of those 3 areas today. And we're going to start off by asking a question. What does IMG Academy, Tutor.com, and the Princeton Review have in common? Well, of course, they're all education companies. But what you may not be aware of is they've all recently been purchased by East Asian investors. I think there's a big country over there, but I can't recall at the moment what it is. But you might be able to figure it out for yourself. And it's really interesting that this kind of coincides with the big push for school choice. Because school choice, they say the money's going to follow the kids, but the kids actually don't get to keep the money. They have to give it to somebody else or they lose it. So they have to give it to somebody. And IMG Academy, Tutor.com, and the Princeton Review are 3 organizations that will be happy to take that money from the student. So from a storytelling aspect, which is one of the 5 core habits of grammar, you have to think about a normal mom or dad who are trying to give their kids a great education. They don't necessarily know how to navigate and jump through all the legal hoops in order to get the government to pay them. But crony capitalists do. They live their life on figuring out where government is throwing money, and then they figure out how to get money from the individuals that are given the government funds and move it to their own pocket. And I think, companies from East Asia might be really good at that. Next is relationship, which is part of the 5 common topics of dialectic. And the relationship is really with capitalism versus crony capitalism. And a lot of times when Bernie Sanders, who's a senator, a left-wing senator, says something, I'm like, yes, I completely agree with that statement. However, your solution is completely wrong because all you're doing is creating more crony capitalism. And capitalism isn't the problem. It's the crony capitalism that has entered our system. And until you really get rid of crony capitalism, we will not have a free country. We will continue to see our taxes go up and we will continue to see our freedoms go down. And rhetorically, the style is one of the 5 canons of rhetoric, the choosing of the best way to present the thought. If a East Asian investor came to the government, Republican government, and said, "Hey, give me money," they would say, "No, we're not going to give you money." But if they're able to convince them to give a child money, and then the children give them the money, then they can wipe their hands clean from that transaction and say, "Oh, we gave the money to the kids. It's not our fault. The kids just gave it to this East Asian investor group." So we will see what happens in the future, but I bet that more people who love crony capitalism will start educating our children, and they will not educate them in the way they should go. They will not educate them with free market principles because they themselves do not believe in free market principles. I hope this was informative, but what should we do as Christians? Well, as Christians, we're called to be generous with our own resources, not our neighbors' resources. So we need to encourage our churches to start education funds. We need to reject government funding of private education and Christian education choices. And we need to help raise our neighbors up through our own efforts, not through the force of government and the force of crony capitalism. All right, now let's jump into our next segment. Hey everyone, I want to interrupt this podcast to tell you a little bit about classical learning tests. If you're tired of standardized tests that truly don't assess your child's knowledge and critical thinking skills, then look no further than the assessments offered by the Classical Learning Test, or CLT for short. Their exams are perfect for homeschoolers who are in the classical Christian methodology. Completing a CLT exam will encourage your child to apply the knowledge they have gained and to think critically, not to just fill in check boxes and receive a good grade. So if your family is looking for assessments designed specifically for seekers of truth, beauty, and goodness, the CLT is for you. Plus, if you're a member of Classical Conversations, you're in luck. You can get a 25% discount off the retail price of all CLT assessments. Just visit classicalconversations.com/CLT to receive your discount. That's classicalconversations.com/CLT. Now let's get back to the show.
Hello and welcome to Classical Crypto with Will. Today I wanted to dive into politics and hey, let's take the temperature. Where does politics hit crypto and what happened in light of the recent G7 summit that just happened? There's reports and there's an article put out yesterday called "Biden Won't Accept Debt Deal Protecting Crypto Traders." So let's dive into this article. I'll read it and then we'll break it down. It says United States President Joe Biden has expressed opposition to a debt ceiling deal that he said would benefit wealthy tax cheats, crypto traders, while putting food asset programs at risk. United States President Joe Biden expressed opposition to a debt ceiling agreement with Republican leaders that would allegedly benefit crypto traders. Attending the Group of Seven G7 summit in Japan this year, Biden called the Republicans' proposed terms, quote, unacceptable during a press conference. The alleged protections for crypto traders refer to tax loss harvesting. According to the Washington Post, there's an ongoing discussion between the White House and Republican leaders about blocking the mechanism for cryptocurrency transactions. Crypto tax loss harvesting is a strategy that investors use to reduce their overall tax liabilities. It involves selling a cryptocurrency at a loss to offset capital gains from the crypto purchase. To claim a loss, the assets must be sold, and the proceeds must be used to purchase a similar asset within 30 days before or after the sale. The same mechanism is used and available for stocks and other assets that you can buy. Along with ending tax loss harvesting for crypto, the White House pitched Republicans on a similar proposal that bars investors from deferring taxes on real estate swaps. Both the changes would add about $40 billion in tax revenue for the U.S. government, which is insane. Republicans, of course, rejected the proposals, a source told the Post. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy claims the U.S. debt rise is a spending problem, not a revenue problem, citing the Biden administration's excessive spending during the pandemic. Meanwhile, the White House blames the debt issues on tax cuts from previous administrations, claiming the revenue has been significantly affected by tax reductions. Republicans want to close the deficit with a $4.8 trillion in spending cuts, which would be fantastic. And this would directly affect the federal agencies' budgets. If Congress fails to raise the debt ceiling, the U.S. could default as early as June 1st. Biden would reportedly speak to McCarthy on the phone during the flight home from Japan to Washington, D.C. In effect, since 1917, the debt ceiling is the limit that Congress has set on how much money the federal government can borrow to pay bills. So first of all, I just think it's interesting that this even came out at the G7 summit because they have much bigger problems to focus on, in my opinion, than cryptocurrency. And I think, cryptocurrency was just supposed to be a portion of the talks. And it sounds like, Biden in a couple of comments in the press conference made it pretty clear that he thinks crypto looks like, tax cheats. It's a new frontier. And then the fact that the Democrats are cracking down on crypto tax loss harvesting is really interesting. So that's when you sell crypto at a loss to reduce your tax liabilities on the gains. So if you bought Bitcoin at $40,000 and it went down and you sold at $20,000, well, you would have lost $20,000. So you would have put that up against any gains you had that year, whether it be in crypto or something else. So they want to reduce that. So that would be taken off the table and you would not get that benefit. So it's just interesting where we're choosing to focus our efforts, if you ask me, and kind of gives you a snapshot of crypto is a growing technology. It's a new industry. It's a new sector. It's booming. It's the next frontier. And if our government continues to sanction it like this or to put it down, making it hard to grow, crypto will move overseas. And I think it already has. Like, it's booming in the Middle East, in Europe, even in Asia. It's kind of crawling back into China, Russia. I think it's just ludicrous that we're making it so hard here in the US for this new technology to take over. I mean, guys, it might be as big as the internet. I think we're getting close to, that internet boom of the early 2000s. I think we're seeing that in blockchain. Right now, we might be in the early stages of it. So if we try to regulate it, if they try to control it or push it down because they don't like that they can't control it, we're going to lose out in America on this amazing technology. So those are my thoughts on the summit and Biden's comments on crypto. We'll see what happens in the near future.
As an athlete, I really enjoyed hearing about Nathan's experience with gymnastics. And of course, my wife was into gymnastics and a high-level gymnast as well. So his stories really resonated with me with some of the things that I had heard from her throughout the years. And it's just real great always to have a Classical Conversations graduate on the show and to hear how they are doing and how your efforts to homeschool and to form Christian communities has led to a flourishing life. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Be sure to review and rate the show and share it with a friend.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.